Ziad was very modest, knew when to laugh, when to make a joke. He had studied that all very well. The biggest surprise was that he had decided not to be our brother or our friend anymore, but be part of a gang of lunatics that decided they were going to change history by killing a lot of innocent people.
Welcome back. This is the Legacy Times, bringing you in-depth exploration of history, politics, finance, and global affairs. Today we will discuss the 9/11 terrorist who stood apart by background, behavior, and personality, a man to whom his own family and friends seemed the least likely to walk the path he ultimately chose. His name was Ziad Jarrah, the Al-Qaeda terrorist who piloted United Airlines Flight 93, the plane that never reached its target because of the passengers who fought back. This is the story of Ziad Jarrah, his life, his radicalization, his role in the Hamburg Cell, the 9/11 attacks, and the aftermath. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. Now, let's begin. Ziad Samir Jarrah was born on May 11, 1975 in Masra, a district of Beirut, Lebanon. He grew up in a wealthy Lebanese family. His father worked for the Lebanese government and his mother as an elementary school teacher. Though Jarrah's family were Sunni Muslims, they lived a secular lifestyle. Due to this and his wealthy background, Ziad Jarrah attended a private Catholic school for both primary and secondary education. Ironically, from a young age, Jarrah wanted to be a pilot. However, his father discouraged him from being a pilot because he was afraid of losing his only son in an accident. Jarrah had a close relationship with his uncle, Jamal Jarrah, who is a former banker and Lebanese politician who served in the cabinet of Prime Minister Saad Hariri. Ziad Tuba, a childhood friend of Ziad Jarrah, described Ziad Jarrah as a wealthy kid who showed off pictures of himself at parties with Christian kids in East Beirut and would take the bus to school every day, a privilege for only the wealthy at the time in Lebanon. When both Ziads would stay out late, Tuba would sleep over at Ziad Jarrah's house to avoid the snipers on his walk back home due to the Lebanese Civil War that lasted until 1990. On those occasions, both would spend time talking about Jarrah's flings with girls. His stories were fun, and they calmed the tensions caused by the sound of bullets and bombs outside. Jarrah also used to show Tuba his martial arts skills. He described his friend as both aggressive and gentle in manner. Ziad Jarrah's family and loved ones had simple hopes for the young boy, that he would study abroad, travel, and succeed in life. However, they had no idea where that journey would ultimately take him. In 1996, Ziad Jarrah and his cousin Salim Ghazi Jarrah moved to Greifswald, Germany to study aerospace engineering. European life suited Ziad Jarrah: clubs, travel, the beach, and independence. Jarrah initially did not attend any mosque and loved to drink alcohol. Around this time, he fell in love with a beautiful young Turkish-German woman named Aysel Sengun. For the remainder of his life, Ziad Jarrah maintained a romantic relationship with Aysel, and they made plans to marry. In late 1997, Ziad Jarrah left Greifswald and moved to Hamburg, where he enrolled at the Hamburg University of Applied Sciences to study aerospace engineering. This move placed him in the orbit of a small group of young Arab men whose paths would intertwine with his: Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, and Ramzi bin al-Shibh. Years later, these four young men would be known across the world as the infamous Hamburg Cell. Hamburg in the late 1990s had pockets of Islamist activism, especially around the Al-Quds Mosque, which had become a meeting point for radical preachers and young men searching for meaning. Jarrah didn't immediately fall deep into this world. He was handsome, outgoing, social, warm, and maintained close relationships. But slowly, he was drawn closer to the group's discussions about global politics and the idea of jihad. Some of the members of Al-Quds Mosque would meet at an apartment on 54 Marienstrasse in Hamburg. For Ziad Jarrah and the Hamburg Cell, this became their base of operation. This apartment was barely furnished, but had a high-speed internet connection. The young men called their humble apartment Dar al-Ansar, the house of the followers. Over time, the radical teachings of Al-Quds Mosque would start impacting Ziad Jarrah, and around 1998, the handsome, wealthy playboy from Lebanon would fall to radical Islam. During this time, Ziad Jarrah grew out his beard and wrote a note to himself: "I come to you with men who love death just as you love life. Oh, the smell of paradise is rising." Jarrah's newly found radicalism started impacting his relationship with ISIL. He started criticizing her for wearing clothes he considered revealing and shamed her for drinking alcohol. Intelligence officials would later describe Jarrah's path to extremism as gradual, conflicted, and deeply personal. He lived in two worlds: the affectionate boyfriend and outgoing student, and the man increasingly influenced by the radicals around him. In late 1999, on the recommendation of the connections they made at Al-Quds Mosque, Ziad Jarrah, along with future 9/11 hijacker pilots Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi, traveled to Afghanistan. Here, Jarrah met with Osama bin Laden and senior al-Qaeda officials. He trained in al-Qaeda camps that were designed not just for combat, but for grooming operatives for long-term missions. According to later investigations, Jarrah impressed his trainers with his education, his language skills being fluent in German and English, and his ability to blend into Western society. Bin Laden asked Ziad Jarrah, Mohammed Atta, and Marwan al-Shehi if they would accept martyrdom. All three men accepted. Atta would be appointed the leader of the group, and Osama bin Laden would assign these men to what was called the Plains Operation, and later would become the September 11th plot. Ziad Jarrah and the other members of the Hamburg Cell would leave al-Qaeda's training camps and return home to Germany. On the way back to Hamburg, Ziad Jarrah is almost arrested at Dubai International Airport by suspicious customs officials. Jarrah pasted a page of the Quran into his passport, and custom inspectors found tons of radical Islam propaganda in his luggage. What happened next remains unsolved to terrorism experts worldwide, but Ziad Jarrah talked to custom officials about his plans about going to America to become a pilot. After being interrogated at Dubai Airport for 4 hours, Ziad Jarrah was set free. Officials in Dubai claimed they reported this incident to American authorities. However, the CIA claims no warning was ever reported to American officials. Jarrah would return to Germany and, under the instructions of al-Qaeda, destroyed his passport and reported his passport lost and was given a new one. After months of no contact with ISIL, Ziad Jarrah appears at ISIL's doorstep clean-shaven. Jarrah refused to tell ISIL where he was for the past few months, but talked about wanting to go to America to take flying lessons. At this time, Jarrah and the other members of the Hamburg Cell started researching and applying to flight schools in the United States. By early 2000, Ziad Jarrah, Mohammed Atta, and Marwan al-Shehi were granted U.S. visas. That same spring, Jarrah was accepted into a flight school in Venice, Florida, and just a few months later, in the summer of 2000, Ziad Jarrah would arrive in the United States through the same airport where he would later lead his final mission, Newark International Airport. Between 2000 and 2001, Ziad Jarrah lived a life that seemed impossibly divided. He started taking flying lessons at the Florida Flight Center in Venice. His flight instructor, Arnie Krutoff, had this to say about Ziad Jarrah.
Ziad had a good sense of humor and mixed very well with the other students. At the time, there was no other Muslim students, and really the only thing that reminded one of Ziad Jarrah being a Muslim was his name.
While he was a student at the Florida Flight Center, Jarrah was roommates with a fellow pilot who was also from Germany named Thorsten Biermann. Biermann recalled that Jarrah would often make him breakfast before leaving for class in the morning. He never heard Jarrah talk about politics or religion. He was friendly and would either call or email his girlfriend Aysel in Germany every day. By August 2000, Ziad Jarrah earned a single-engine private pilot certificate. Later in the year, he started training on jumbo jet simulators. As the plane's operation progressed, Aysel began having suspicions that Jarrah was hiding something from her. Jarrah never revealed anything to her. He went back to Germany to visit Aysel and flew back to Beirut to visit his family. In late 2000, Aysel came to visit Ziad Jarrah in Florida for 10 days and was even able to attend one of his flight lessons. In late January 2001, Ziad Jarrah went back home to Beirut to be with his ill father and returned to Germany to see Aysel. Jarrah's behavior was completely different from the other 9/11 hijackers. He was very close to his family, he traveled often, and was in love with Aysel. Jarrah is the only hijacker that did not live off an Al-Qaeda stipend. Instead, his family would wire him $2,000 a month from Beirut. In mid-2001, Ziad Jarrah was deep into preparing for the 9/11 attacks. He roomed with Ahmed al-Haznawi, one of the hijackers that will help him commandeer United Airlines Flight 93. Jarrah would take several cross-country surveillance flights throughout the summer of 2001 to observe and take notes of the flight crew's routine. He attended fitness gyms and kept in contact with his family and friends. Mohammed Atta, the ringleader of the operation, and Al-Qaeda senior leadership were worried about Ziad Jarrah. Due to his behavior, Al-Qaeda worried Jarrah might back out of the plan, or worse, expose them all. Al-Qaeda's fears came to a climax on July 25, 2001, when Ziad Jarrah bought a one-way ticket to Germany to see Aysel again. It remains a mystery to intelligence officials if Jarrah's original plan was to leave the United States and never return. Ramzi bin al-Shibh, the fourth member of the Hamburg Cell, who was denied a U.S. visa the previous year, met up with Ziad Jarrah in Germany. Bin al-Shibh had to calm Jarrah down and convince him to go through with the attacks planned in the coming weeks. Experts believe that without Ramzi bin al-Shibh's intervention, it is very possible Ziad Jarrah backs out of the 9/11 attacks or exposes the plot to authorities. On August 5, 2001, Ziad Jarrah arrives back in the United States. This trip to Germany would be his last one, and it is also the last time he ever sees Aysel in person. On September 7th, 2001, Ziad Jarrah and his 3 lieutenants fly to Newark, New Jersey to prepare for the final phase of the plot. 2 days later, on September 9th, Ziad Jarrah tells his family back in Beirut that he will be home in Lebanon the following week to attend his cousin's wedding. He tells his family he bought a new suit for the occasion. That very same night, Jarrah would get pulled over by a Maryland state trooper for driving at 90 miles per hour. He receives a $200 speeding ticket from the state trooper and drives off. On September 10th, 2001, Ziad Jarrah spent his final day on Earth writing a letter to Aysel. This letter would be intercepted by U.S. counterterrorism officials in the weeks after 9/11. He expressed his love for ISIL, apologizes for not being able to get married and have children, and also justifications for his actions. On September 11, 2001, at 12:05 a.m., Ziad Jarrah checked into the Newark Airport Marriott Hotel, paying $450 cash for 2 non-smoking rooms. After sleeping for a few hours, Jarrah wakes up and checks out of his hotel. Jarrah places several calls on the morning of September 11th, including 5 calls back home to Lebanon, 1 final call to ISIL to tell her he loves her, and a final call to fellow Hamburg Cell member Marwan al-Shehi, who was flying out of Boston Logan Airport with a team of 5 hijackers on United Airlines Flight 175. At 7:48 a.m., Ziad Jarrah would be the last of the 4 hijackers to board United Airlines Flight 93. He sits in seat 1B. At 8:42 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 departed Newark, bound for San Francisco. 44 people in total were on board United Flight 93. At 9:28 a.m., the 4 hijackers make their move. Ziad Jarrah most likely remained seated while his 3 lieutenants stabbed the passenger and breached the cockpit door, killing Captain Jason Dahl and First Officer Leroy Homer for Jarrah to take control of the aircraft. The passengers on board Flight 93 placed calls to their loved ones and learned what had occurred in New York and Washington that morning. The passengers decided to act. The passengers on board United Flight 93 launched a furious counter-assault against the 4 hijackers. To throw the passengers off balance, Ziad Jarrah pitches the plane up and down and side to side. However, the revolt only intensified. After neutralizing or killing at least 2 of the hijackers, the passengers use a drink cart to break the cockpit door down. Jarrah and the passengers struggle for control of the airplane yoke, and Flight 93 turns upside down and begins rapidly descending. At 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 563 miles per hour. Nobody survived, and Ziad Jarrah died at age 26. U.S. officials believe Flight 93's intended target was the U.S. Capitol or the White House. Al-Qaeda's senior leadership later stated that the U.S. Capitol was the intended target. One day later, on September 12th, Arnie Krutev, Ziad Jarrah's former flight instructor, had closed his flight school for the day due to the events that occurred the previous day. However, his secretary called him to tell him he needed to go to the school immediately. When Krutev arrives, he is met by black SUVs and men with black suits and sunglasses. Confused, Krutev asks the men what is happening. The federal agents show him a printed copy of Ziad Jarrah's picture and ask if he knew who he was. Krutev asks the agents if they believe that Jarrah had something to do with the events of the previous day, and they say yes. To confirm if Ziad Jarrah was the pilot hijacker of Flight 93, authorities had Arne Krutev listen to the 2 messages Ziad Jarrah spoke out to the passengers. After listening to them 3 times, Arne Krutev confirmed to the authorities that indeed it was Ziad Jarrah who was the hijacker pilot on United Flight 93. For years, Ziad Jarrah's role in the 9/11 attacks has been debated by analysts. Some see him as a committed jihadist who followed the plan to the end. Others see a conflicted young man drawn into a radical movement he never fully fit into, but ultimately carried out the mission anyway. At the time of this recording, it has been over 24 years since the 9/11 attacks. Ziad Jarrah's family continues to deny he was involved to this day. They claim he was framed or that his evidence was misused. But the overwhelming evidence, including travel records, flight training logs, and the black box recordings of United Flight 93, tie him directly to the plot. Today, Ziad Jarrah remains one of the most debated figures among the 19 hijackers. Educated, outgoing, charming, westernized, yet a willing participant in history's deadliest attack. Ziad Jarrah's story is not just about one man's journey into extremism. It's a reminder of how radicalization can take many forms, how it can touch people from stable families and privileged backgrounds, and how even the most unlikely individuals can be pulled into catastrophic violence. His path ended in tragedy for himself, for the passengers of Flight 93, and for the world. I want to thank you for watching another episode of The Legacy Times. Please like and subscribe, and you can now find The Legacy Times on X, formerly known as Twitter, and on Substack. Stay informed, stay curious, and most importantly, be kind, and I will see you next time.